About 5 minutes into my opening statement, the judge stood up and said, "Counsel, I want to see you in my chambers." And brought me back there and said, in his 35 years on the bench, that was the most offensive opening statement he had ever heard. And he said, "I'm going to dismiss your case. I'm just letting you know now. You can put your appeal on the record, but it doesn't sound to me like you have a case. I don't need to hear the evidence, and you're out. And so is your client." So sure enough, we came out in the courtroom. The judge said, "I'm sure defense counsel has a motion they'd like to make to dismiss the case, correct?" And defense counsel looked like, "What? Huh? What's going on?"
Hello and welcome to the Attorney Post, where we give you the inside scoop with top attorneys in their field. And now, here's our host, Justin West.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Attorney Post, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with attorneys at the top of their game to help you navigate the ins and outs of various legal fields and jurisdictions. Because, as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Today, I am very pleased to be joined by Greg Sobo of the eponymous law firm that bears his name, Sobo and Sobo. Greg, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Justin. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Well, as we always do, let's jump over and take a look first off at your site. So this is Sobo and Sobo. They are personal injury attorneys. It is a nationally recognized personal injury law firm founded in 1969, known for its compassionate client care with a 98% success rate of accepted cases. They have offices in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Ohio, and Wisconsin, and they specialize in cases involving motor vehicle accidents, medical malpractice, construction injuries, and wrongful death. If you want to get a hold of them, just visit SoboLaw. That's SoboLaw, SoboLaw.com, or call 855-GOT-SOBO. As always, we will have information and all of their links down below in the description, so please feel free to jump down there and take a look. Before we begin, as always, we're also going to read from our sponsors, and our first sponsor today is Habanero Social. What if Google could send you free customers or free clients every single month? With Habanero Social, it's not fantasy, it's a reality. Their AI-powered platform optimizes your Google business profile to attract more customers, more clients effortlessly. From cranking out high-quality content to managing reviews and fine-tuning your local SEO, Habanero Social handles it all while you sit back and watch your business grow. 85% of local search happens in the Google Maps Maps pack, which is the place that you need to be to capture those clients. An optimized Google business profile doesn't just show up, it engages, it builds trust, it increases clicks, and ultimately boosts your business. And we're so confident that it'll work that they offer a 3 times ROI guarantee. If you don't make at least 3 times what you spend with them, they will refund your money or they will make it right. Ready to get more clients without lifting a finger? Visit habanerosocial.com. That's habanerosocial.com. As always, we will have a link in the description below. Our second sponsor is Groove Funnels, which is an older sponsor that we just brought back because they have a wonderful promotion this year. If you're an entrepreneur or if you're a dream chaser, listen up. Running an online business doesn't have to mean drowning in subscriptions or wrestling with a messy tech stack. Groove.cm is rolling out a jaw-dropping limited time offer that lets you run your entire operation. Think stunning websites with Groove pages, high converting sales funnels, email campaigns, e-commerce stores, even affiliate programs, all absolutely free for an entire year. No credit card required. That's right, over 1 million users are already saving thousands of dollars and scaling their businesses smarter with this all-in-one platform that replaces tools like ClickFunnels, Shopify, and more. There's no risk, there's no hidden fees, just pure, powerful growth tools to help you focus on what matters most, which is, of course, building your empire. But hurry, this deal won't last long. Jump in right now and see why Groove is the secret weapon every entrepreneur needs in 2025. Visit theattorneypost.com/groove to sign up for free today for an entire year. And again, if you can't make it profitable, you never pay, they don't ask for a credit card, that's theattorneypost.com/groove. Alrighty. And jumping back over here, I know we have a shorter time frame with Greg today, unfortunately, due to a prior commitment, but we will try and get through as many of the good questions as we can today. So I am joined by Greg Sobo of Sobo and Sobo. He is a managing partner and has dedicated more than 15 years to personal injury, successfully litigating and negotiating significant settlements for accident victims. Before his legal career, Greg was an accomplished competitive diver, achieving 4 East Coast Athletic Conference titles, reaching NCAA Division I finals twice, and competing in the 1996 Olympic trials. After retiring from diving, he excelled academically at Syracuse University College of Law, graduating magna cum laude and serving as an executive editor for the Syracuse Law Review. His work has been cited by the Massachusetts Supreme Court. Recognized nationally for his legal skills, Greg was named among the top trial lawyer prospects by the National Institute, and I just totally clicked on the wrong thing and lost what I'm reading, by the National Institute for Trial Advocacy, and his diverse background as both an elite athlete and a distinguished legal professional underscores his dedication, discipline, and commitment to justice. And that was a mouthful, and I stumbled over a little bit, and I'm sure I missed all the important parts anyway. So my first question to you, Greg, as always, is what did I miss?
I'm not sure you missed much. I would say I actually did not compete in the 1996 Olympic trials. I'm
Oh,
not sure how that got out there. I got very, very close to that, and I definitely was one of the top ranked divers in the country. But I think you just about encapsulated it all. And I've been doing personal injury now for more than 15 years, almost 25. The time goes quickly, but I think you nailed the intro. Besides that, thank you.
I'll talk. I have a gal that does my pre interview notes, so I'll make sure she takes a look at that for the future, and I'll try and figure out where the rumor of your diving came with. But that's still
That's
really
fine.
awesome.
Thank you.
Absolutely amazing. So let me ask you this. If I didn't know who you were, obviously I have done some pre-research, and I know where we're going to be talking today and what we're going to be discussing. But if you and I were in an elevator, had 30 seconds or a minute, and I was like, "Hey, Greg, what do you do? Give me your pitch. Tell me about your firm. Tell me about Sobo and Somo. Tell me about who you help. Tell me where they are. Tell me what you specialize in and why people choose to work with you and your firm."
Yeah. Oh, well, thanks. And it would be great to meet you today or in an elevator or anyway. But just I think really what separates Sobo and Sobo from most firms is a really unique combination between client service and the results that we get. I really feel like you don't often get both with firms that either tout that they're trial lawyers and they get these great verdicts, or they're really compassionate and they want to help clients. You kind of get one or the other. I really feel that we're sort of that unique mix of both, where with our clients, we're warm, we're compassionate, we treat them like gold. We were one of the first firms I feel like to kind of start that trend, talking about how well we treat our clients. Yeah, at the same time, when it comes to our litigation skills and how we treat the cases, we draw tough lines. I believe we get the best results out there as far as results for settlements and verdicts. And so, kind of compassionate with the clients, tough in the courtroom. It's a tough combination, but we got them both. It's taken a long time to get that formula right, but that sums us up in a nutshell.
That's awesome. Do you know? I don't even know if you know the answer to this because I'm sure it's a huge number. How many attorneys do you guys have? You're in multiple states, obviously. You've got attorneys all across the board. But how big is your firm?
Yeah, and I think because of that unique mix, we are growing like crazy. Last count was 74 attorneys, but we are always looking for talent and training and onboarding all the time. So I do expect by the end of the year, we'll probably be over 100.
Oh wow, that's awesome. Do you have your eyes on some new states, or are you going to just keep growing where you are?
Good question. I do have my eyes on a few states for later this year, but for at least for the first half, I really want to focus on the states we're in.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So let me ask you this: what got you into law? Were you a kid that grew up watching Perry Mason reruns and just like knew you wanted to be an attorney? I know your father. You
Yeah.
actually he's the other Sobo on the masthead, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously you've got this family connection. But did you always know you wanted to do law? Was it something that you kind of stumbled into as a side passion? Tell me about your journey, and then obviously what got you into PI, because I know that if I'm not mistaken, your father did not start as a PI attorney, but you guys have kind of shifted into doing principally PI.
Exactly, Justin. That's astute of you to notice. So, yeah, I mean, I wanted to become a lawyer, I think, for a few reasons. One, of course, the main one, my father was an attorney, not a litigation attorney, but a real estate attorney. And even as a real estate attorney, when he was walking around town, so many people talked about how he helped them. And I always looked up to that and could see the admiration in the public's eye about what he did for them and helping them purchase a home. So that was one. Certainly, I looked up to my father. Also, as you can tell from my athletic background, I'm sort of a competitive guy. So,
No.
litigation tapped right into that. I really loved the courtroom aspect of law and litigating. I loved the strategy. It is like a sport. There's winners, there's losers, lessons you can take from it and build on. So I also gravitated for that reason as well. And yeah, I was an LA Law fan too, not Perry Mason, but LA Law was my show, and yeah, love the idea of being a courtroom lawyer. So That's why I wanted to be a
I'd
lawyer.
forgotten about LA law. I don't want to date myself, but when I was a kid, I would in the 80s, I would my grandmother would babysit me a lot. I was a single child of an only mom, or only child of a single mom, however that works out. And so my grandma would babysit me. And LA Law and Dallas were like her two shows, and I think I can hear the theme song in the back of my head when I think about it. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
here's a random question I didn't ask in the pre-roll, but I am kind of curious. You guys have a multi-state platform, multi-state firm. Obviously about 5 years ago, the whole world went through this silly pandemic thing. God willing, it's, not going to happen again. Knock on wood, as they say, right?
Right.
But I'm curious about what your experience was running a very successful multi-state practice in the midst of COVID, right? Did you guys have different responses in different areas? Did it change what you do for the better, for the worse? Did it streamline things? How was your particular experience? Did you have to do a Zoom trial or Zoom jury or Zoom depositions? And do you think the changes were for the better or for the worse?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, certainly we had to change. I think the main change for us is we as trial lawyers or lawyers that sort of push personal injury cases, we really try to be aggressive in court to get the best settlement possible. So the toughest challenge for us was the courts closing. Uh, so when the courts close, there's less pressure on insurance companies to settle because there's no trial that's imminent. So we really did have to think of out of the box ways to keep pressure on the insurance companies and through non traditional forms of litigation, we were able to do that. Arbitration, mediation, things of that nature sort of really helped us reinvent that aspect and sort of grow that part of our practice so that we are still getting those top settlements, but not having to rely on a judge or jury to do it. So that worked out well. And most of our cases do settle, but again, when you have the threat of a trial, that's really what pushes that top number. So what we had to use is just a different means of getting that pressure on insurance companies, which we did. Yes, like most companies, we had to adjust and work from home. We weren't allowed to come to the office. We did have to do Zoom depositions and in some cases trials. But most of that is over now. The depositions are still virtual, but the trials are back in person. Kind of to put a bow on this answer, for better or for worse, I think it's for worse. I'm an old school guy. I like to sit across from someone when I'm questioning them.
Mhm.
I think in person is certainly the way, not just to litigate, but to be in the office and build on a culture. So, and I'm glad to see, frankly, that it seems that the United States, although last of all the countries, is coming back to work. So that's my take on COVID and how we got through it.
No, it's totally fair. I've heard a number of people talk about the idea of a Zoom trial just being a nightmare. Somebody said to me, and I thought
Yeah.
it was a kind of insightful concept. He said, one of the things I love is if I'm plaintiff side, defense side doesn't matter. But the opposing side will say something that I know is wrong. And I'm able to look over and make eye contact with a jury member. And he looks at me and I look at him and I can tell we're on the same wavelength. And in Zoom, you can't do eye contact in Zoom. You can fake it, but you can't really do it. So I don't know that I would ever uh, I don't know. It'd be really weird to try and do a pure Zoom trial. I'm curious if it would be more impartial, less impartial. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I don't know that there's an effect on how partial it is. I do think you're right, though. I think for it's sort of like a difference between live theater and going to see TV or a movie. The movie director is sort of directing your attention of where you have to look and what you have to say, and then as opposed to live theater where you get to sort of have more control over what you want to focus on, what you hear and what you see. And I think the experience is just so much more meaningful in person.
Gotcha. No, I think I would agree with that 100% as well. And
Yeah.
I think I'm glad everyone is moving back into the way that things always were. I think you can't replace human contact. I love Zoom. I do a lot of Zoom with a lot of people. I run the podcast. I rebooted the podcast because all of a sudden attorneys were Zooming and they knew how to
Yeah.
do it. They had to
Yeah.
talk them through downloading this platform and whatnot. So that's why I
Yeah.
rebooted it. So there's definitely, silver linings to it, but absolutely. So let me
I-
ask you this. You've been practicing law for 25 years now, not 15, more than 15, at least 15, for 25 years now. And I'm sure that you've had, as they say, if you go up to bat enough, you're going to strike out eventually. And I'm sure you've had a couple of moments in your practice of law that you would consider to be a failure or a setback. Maybe a jury didn't decide your way. Maybe you forgot to fill out a form the right way. Maybe a witness said the wrong thing. But can you let my listeners, Greg, can you let them know about a time in your practice of law that you would consider a failure? But what did you learn from that, and how do you carry that forward to make sure you're always giving the best care to your clients?
Wow, yeah, that's a great question, and I think just like any lawyer and also entrepreneur, you're filled with things that you would have done differently and mistakes that you've made and learned from. I think the first one that comes to mind for me is my second trial only. So it's, as your second trial, you're still really nervous and you're spending a ton of time. Not that you always spend a ton of time, but in particular, because you're not as familiar with how trial procedure is and what will happen, you're spending so much time getting ready for this trial and you're so nervous about what could happen. And this particular case was against a local school district where a bus driver was injured when he was trying to break up a fight in
Mm.
between the time when school was dismissed and on the way the kids made it to the bus. And at the time, I was with another firm. The theory was that it was a very violent time that required security for the school. So my theme for the case was there should have been more security for this very violent school. So the beginning of my opening statement, I began talking about the school and how violent it was at that time, and I compared it to a jail. Bars on the windows, guards at the door. This is a dangerous time. They should have had security. Well, about 5 minutes into my opening statement, the judge stood up and said, "Counsel, I want to see you in my chambers." And brought me back there and said, in his 35 years on the bench, that was the most offensive opening statement he had ever heard. And he said, "I'm going to dismiss your case. I'm just letting you know now. You can put your appeal on the record, but it doesn't sound to me like you have a case. I don't need to hear the evidence, and you're out. And so is your client." So, sure enough, we came out in the courtroom. The judge said, "I'm sure defense counsel has a motion they'd like to make to dismiss the case, correct?" And defense counsel looked like, "What? Huh? What's going on?" He repeated the sentence, "I'm sure you have a motion to dismiss to make, right?" He said yes. He got up, he made a motion to dismiss, and the case was dismissed.
Wow.
So, obviously, a big failure for me. What I learned from that, it turned out that the judge used to work for that very school district that I was disparaging for a good 15 years before coming a judge. So, I learned that you can know the law, you can know the clients, you can be ready for trial, but really the background of the people involved in deciding your case matters just as much, if not more, than the facts you're presenting.
Wow. So this is a hard question to ask. Do you think the judge was right? Do you think he was probably shouldn't have done what he did, or because that,
Yeah,
especially just based on the opening argument, like,
no, I he was definitely not right to do that, and it's
okay,
actually not even proper under New York law to do it. The firm that I worked for at the time, made a business decision not to appeal because at the end of the day, those are expensive and time consuming, and they didn't feel the case warranted that type of time and money. But I'm sure it would have been reversed if we did, and sure wish that they did because I really believed in the case. But yeah, but that's what the judge decided to do, and unfortunately, we didn't appeal it.
that's crazy. I've never heard
Yeah,
a story quite like that.
yeah, yeah.
That kind of gets my blood boiling.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Feels very unjust.
At
Well,
the end of the day, Justin, you feel bad for the client. This was his day in court, and I really believe he had a really important story to tell, and I think it would have made our schools safer in this area. That's where the case was at the time. Had the judge just done what he was supposed to do, let the evidence come out, let the jury decide.
yeah.
But unfortunately, that was taken from us.
Okay. Well, that sucks. Really. And
Yes.
thank you. I mean,
Well,
that's one of the most honest answers I've gotten in a while. When I ask that question, people are like, "Oh, I struggle with being too diligent and hardworking."
right.
I
Yeah.
feel viscerally that loss. So I get that 100%. Well,
Yeah.
the flip side of that coin, though, Greg, is I'm sure you've had some great successes. Those moments, those feathers in your proverbial cap when you're falling asleep at night and you think back on your day, your week, your month, your year, your career, and you're like, man, I'm so glad that worked out. What's one or two of the things you're most proud of in your legal career?
Well, I mean, certainly number one would be going into business with my father. There's been nightmare stories of people working with family since the beginning of time. And even in our local area, we've seen firms break up not only the firm and their companies, but also families. Fortunately for me, it's been nothing but a tremendous enriching experience to work with my father and grow a firm, with him. Even though he does a different practice area, we did collaborate a lot of times on business strategy and how to treat clients, and really did make an impression on me that I'll always cherish. So, that's certainly one thing that comes to mind. And I think
No,
the
I,
other. I'm
I'm
sorry, go ahead.
aware in New York, there was a major law firm that split up, two-partner name, and it was such a bad split up, if I'm not mistaken, that they have an off-Broadway show about that law firm. I won't mention them by name, just for the sake of it, though anybody that does a Google search will figure out who it is. And I've
Right.
actually talked with one of the partners in the past too. But it blew my mind that you could take that drama and turn it into an off-Broadway play. But I totally get it. So yeah, avoiding family drama is good. But anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think there's been at least three or four family firms up here that just during, the span of my working with my father, we've seen end in a very ugly way. So yeah, I know that sort of risk was out there, and it was in my mind when I did join my father's at that time real estate practice. But again, I'm really glad that I did, and certainly when I look back, it's probably the best decision as a professional that I've ever made. And the other thing is it's just a smaller point, but the other thing I'm really glad I did in going into business was as a trial lawyer to just be myself. I had gotten lots of advice coming from two other firms, very highly touted, prestigious firms in New York, telling me how to act and telling me how to try a case. But at the end of the day, I kind of just decided to do it my way and let my own personality come through. And I think at the end of the day, I'm really glad that I did that because, rise or fall, it's best to do it, being genuine. And I'm glad I kind of chose that path.
No, absolutely. How do you have to wear multiple hats, I'm sure. You've got your CEO hat, you've got your attorney hat. Which hat do you wear the most? Which hat would you prefer to be wearing?
Yeah. Geez, you asked that the way I hoped you wouldn't. Yeah, the hat I wear now is the chief executive officer hat. 98% of my time is managing people, and if there are any friction points in the business, managing those. Also planning for the future and managing culture. So that's really where I spend most of my time now. I went to law school, and my true passion is trying cases. I love to be in the courtroom. I love to fight for clients. And my favorite job, I love this job to death. But I think the one that really was the most adrenaline and the most fun for me was when I was just trying cases, one after another, early in my career. So that would probably be one I'd like to get back to at some point.
Fair enough. Well, hopefully you can get back there at least occasionally, knock a
Yeah, yeah,
home runs here and there, right? Everyone loves to do
right,
that.
sure.
Um, so 25 years in law, one of my other favorite questions to ask attorneys in your position is just this. I'm sure you've encountered absurdity. And maybe again, I think that your failure example would qualify, in my opinion, as quite an absurd moment in your career. But can you share another time or a moment when just absolute absurdity reigned, maybe in the courtroom, maybe in a case that somebody brought or didn't bring, or how it was dismissed or whatnot? But what's one of the most absurd things you've encountered in your practice of law, Greg?
I'm not sure absurd is the word, but oh, maybe. I think going, back to my trial days that I mentioned earlier, it was my very first trial. You have to question jurors. And the first juror I ever questioned, I could have sworn was a female. But when I called him Mr. Smith, he corrected me and said it's Mrs. Smith. So actually, it was a female, excuse me, and I thought it was a male. So, really embarrassed. It's your first trial and your first juror that you're questioning. And I had a few jurors come up to me after and said, that was an understandable mistake. I could see you were embarrassed, but I think we all thought that was a male. So yeah, pretty embarrassing for me at the time, and I never make that mistake again. I always make sure I call people by their name, not Mister or Mrs.
That's fair. That's one of those things that probably stings a little bit also when you're falling asleep at night. The things that don't let you fall asleep, right?
Right, right, absolutely.
Uh, Related question though, have you ever sat on a jury yourself? I always find it interesting that most attorneys never get a chance to serve on a jury, or if they did, it was early on in their career because once people know who you are, obviously you're a very prominent attorney in your space as well. So probably as soon as they know who you are, I would assume most people dismiss you. But have you ever had a chance to sit on a jury?
I have not. I get dismissed, unfortunately, right when they see me. But I would love to, and I have the highest respect for those that serve in that capacity. And I can honestly say, win or lose, I feel like the jury has always gotten it right. I've never really thought that jurors have their own sort of agenda. I think that they really try to do the right thing and deliver justice. So sitting on a jury would be a wonderful thing, but unfortunately, haven't had a chance.
Gotcha. Um, okay, so let's dive in because I know again I want to be as respectful of your time as possible. I want to get some,
No,
a
thank you,
couple
Justin.
questions. Obviously, you guys do a lot of, motor vehicle accidents. Those are everyone thinks when you think of an injury lawyer, that's what you think of, obviously, or that and medical mal. And there's obviously been a ton of technological changes and advances when it comes to the realm of driving, whether it's self-driving cars now, whether it's dash cams being available, whether it's everyone having a little black box that they keep in their pocket and, look at when they're driving and they shouldn't be, right? What are some of the biggest changes that have happened in your legal career in the space of, motor vehicle accidents? And where do you see the trend going in the next 25 years?
Yeah. I mean, there have been so many changes in the past 2 decades that I've been representing motor vehicle accident victims. Certainly the vehicles just right off the bat are so much more safe now than they used to be. Uh, I believe it or not, when I first started, there were even still cars around that didn't have operational seatbelts. So they would just have like the one that goes across your lap, not across your shoulder. So, obviously the cars are much safer, not just from a seatbelt perspective, but also the mechanics, the crash testing, the crumple zones. When you get hit now, you're much more likely to be uninjured as opposed to previously when it really was a lot worse. So that's one. The way you kind of ask the question, it does, of course, matter too. You have a lot of technology that even senses accidents before they even happen. So that's been a big change. And you might have a car that gives you an alarm as you're getting close to hitting something, or a rear view camera. These are things that really do make a big difference in keeping accidents from occurring. So those are certainly some changes too. And where we're headed, we've been told that self-driving cars are going to be a big thing and change the way we travel. I do think we are headed that way. I do also think that it's going to take a long time to migrate to a mostly autonomous driving vehicle type society, but I do think we're headed that way, and I don't think it'll be during my lifetime. But that's,
Yeah.
I think, where we're ultimately headed.
I'm fascinated. I saw a clip the other day, and it was a self-driving car, and it was driving down the road with somebody in it. They were as far as I could tell, doing everything right. And an old lady was walking down the street and like tripped and fell right in front of the car. The car swerved to not hit the lady, which is amazing, but caused a fronting collision with another car in the other lane. And so then the question becomes, who's at fault in those situations? Do you see? I don't know if I can't say it was a Tesla or who it was. I think they're the biggest provider of those right now, but in that situation, who's even liable? Is there a settled law on that? Is that the wild, wild west of MVA cases right now? Like, how do you determine who's at fault and how do you go about taking care of the people that are hurt?
Yeah, so a great question. And number one, every vehicle has an owner. So that owner is going to have to take responsibility for an accident that happens in their vehicle, whether they are actually in the vehicle or not. That's pretty much universal throughout the United States. If you own that vehicle, it gets in an accident, your name's on it, your insurance is going to be on the hook for that accident. So that's kind of layer number one. And then layer number two is, yeah, I think in that instance, whatever program or technology was operating that vehicle, whether it be some of the ones we know, like Tesla or Honda, then they would also be liable.
Gotcha. There's been a big increase also in, I don't know how I want to put this. Basically, non-commercial commercial vehicles, right? There's all these people now are driving for Uber, driving for Lyft, all these rideshare
Yeah.
programs.
Mhm.
How has that changed the landscape? Is it any different from, you're based in part of New York City. I've known a number of attorneys there. I've been there very briefly. It's seen, used to be a sea of yellow was what New York was
Right.
taxi.
Yeah.
And I'm told that that's dwindling, and really has in the last, 5 to 10 years. Has the rise of these rideshare programs changed things for the better, for the worse? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I don't know that it's actually changed much from a personal injury perspective. There's just as many accidents, if not more. So I can't say it's made the city any safer. You don't see as many taxi cabs out there. And the New York City insurance is limited. So I think in one way it might be a little bit better for personal injury victims in that the insurance situation is better if they're injured in an Uber or Lyft as opposed to a New York City taxi. But otherwise, I think it's pretty much stay the same. In fact, there's probably even more accidents now than even just 5 years ago.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Um, So you guys do a lot of things. Obviously, I'm talking about motor vehicle accidents, but PI is a huge realm with lots of different facets. I think one of the ones I'm always most fascinated by is medical malpractice. Was it Johns Hopkins? I think did a study a few years ago, maybe even a half a decade, if not a decade ago. But they basically said that medical malpractice theoretically could be like the third leading cause of death in the country. Something like 250,000 deaths every year probably are the result of medical malpractice. What are your thoughts on that stat? And how do you guys incorporate medical malpractice into what you're doing? Are there states where it's easier and harder to go after? Do you guys work principally in states where there's no caps, or tell me about your experience with med mal?
Yeah, well, I think you're right to point out the amount of medical mistakes there are in our country is just staggering, unbelievably so. But we'll go wherever there's an injustice. So we don't let the fact that there might be a cap on the award inhibit us from pursuing a medical malpractice mistake. If there's malpractice in a state where you can only win a certain amount of money, we'll pursue it as long as we feel that there's a client that needs justice there. But yeah, I do think that pretty much across the country, the laws are very protective of doctors and medical providers for the mistakes they make. So you have to be careful in the cases you take because, again, the law does protect doctors. They're allowed to make certain mistakes, for example. So they're not perfect, and the law's not going to require them to be perfect. Only certain mistakes will qualify, no matter what state you're in. So you have to be careful on that one point. But again, we'll go anywhere that there's an error that we believe deserves justice.
That's good to know. I've heard some people say that they won't even go into certain states. Like, I'm sorry, it's just not worth it. The award we can get for the person, the award we can get, and I know that these cases are expensive. One of the things I've always appreciated, excuse me, about medical mal or about PI in general is the way you guys work at the contingency fee basis, because you
Yeah.
guys make law accessible to people that otherwise wouldn't be able to afford attorney rates and would basically be, forgive my acronym, SOL, right? They
Right.
not have access to the law and they would not get justice. So I've always loved the model that you guys operate on. But I also know these cases can be ridiculously expensive. Every time you choose to take on a case, you're taking on six figures, seven figures in liability on the off chance that maybe not the off chance. And you guys bat 98% from what I hear. But even still, there's always the chance that you're going to take a case and it's not going to go somewhere. The judge will dismiss you at the very beginning, or whatever
Right.
happened. How do you balance all of that and because you do have a business to run, you've got bills to pay and mouths to feed and everything else. Where's the tension point there? And maybe you have to wear your CEO hat to answer that question.
Yeah, sure. So again, I mean, I think one reason you'll hear from attorneys that they won't go into certain states because of caps or because of what the case is or how much money it's going to bring. Attorneys, most attorneys are attorneys because they want to make money, and there's nothing wrong with that. I really do enjoy helping people, number one, and the actual process, the actual game, that fight of it, the competition of it, as number two. So for me, if it's a case I think that I'm going to win, and I tend to think that most cases I can win, I will take that case. And even if it costs whatever it costs, I'll pay it. Even sometimes if it's a win for the client, but a loss for the firm on the money side, I'll take it. Is it the best business practice? No, maybe not. But I do feel that when you do a good job for a client that way, that client can refer 100 more. And I
Yeah.
do think that they do see what you're spending in terms of time and commitment. And a victory to them can mean a lot more to than the firm. So probably not the most dollar and cents wise way to approach it. Not the most pragmatic way, but again, I always it's always client first for me. If it's justice for the client and it costs the firm a little bit extra, we're going to do that.
I think that makes sense though. I mean, it really it's in a sense it's investing, and it's putting your money where your mouth is, and it's a commitment to justice at the end of the day, which I think is it's huge. Like that's very important, and knowing that your attorney cares about that, I think is
Yeah,
huge. Um,
absolutely.
What's one of the biggest misconceptions people bring into your office, or brought into your office when you were far more, doing law rather than wearing your CEO hat, right? But when people want to hire an injury attorney, what are the misconceptions they bring into your office, or the things that they should be doing before they pick up the phone and call, or should they call you first and then figure the rest out later?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing to do would be to call us first. We kind of we're built to take it from A to Z from the minute you call, and there's so much to know and do that you'd want us to handle, an accident for you rather than have to navigate it yourself, especially when you're up against $1 billion insurance company. So I do think just reaching out to us is the way to go. But the misconceptions out there that people take to our office are many. I think one is they expect to, when they call a law firm, they have a preset notion that attorney's going to be condescending or rude or talk in legalese, and they're not going to be, they're going to feel stupid. I think right from the beginning, we have a department that does nothing but greet and intake clients, meet them, make sure the case is off to a good start, make sure that the treatment is being seen, getting provided by the best doctors. So, number one, I think it's that misconception of I'm going to feel stupid when I call a lawyer. No, I think when you call our firm, they're going to feel supported and they're going to feel welcome and they're going to feel a lot better. And I think also too, a lot of times clients will tell us when they call us first, I'm not the litigious type. This isn't like me, but I just, I'm hurt, or sometimes they're upset that the other driver didn't even apologize for causing a really bad accident. And I think the misconception is that we live in this really litigious society where everyone's out to make a quick buck. But what we find is that the clients really are just, they want to know their rights. They're legitimately injured in an accident and they just want help. And that's probably the two biggest misconceptions we deal with right from the beginning.
So if somebody is injured in an accident and they remember your number, 855 got Sobo, SOBO. It's an easy number to remember. How
Yeah.
quick do they go from calling that number to talking to an attorney? Like if they're in an accident right now, should they pick up the phone and call that number immediately, or should they talk to the police, get things done, and then call afterwards?
Again, I think if you're in an accident, calling us first is and immediately is the best move to make because we're going to take care of these other things. We're going to reach out to the police department. We'll get the police report if it's ready, or we'll also make sure the police department knows our side of the story so it makes its way into the police report. We'll get evidence from the scene of the accident, which otherwise might be lost. We'll get you for treatment right away. So, number one, you could get better faster, but also a doctor who we know and have worked with can document the injuries properly and clearly so we know what the injuries were caused by the accident. All these things that you do at the beginning of a case make such a big difference at the end. Can we go back and sort of recreate the wheel? Yeah, we can. We're built to do that. It's just a lot easier if they call us right away.
Gotcha. Well, that makes perfect sense. Well, Greg, I want to be as respectful of your time as possible. I know we're actually coming close to, we still have a few questions to go here. So here in a
Sure,
minute,
sure.
I want to ask you my two closing questions. I'll give them to you now so you can percolate on them, and then we'll jump over, show your side again. Question number one is, if we go back in time and meet young Greg, and you're able to give yourself some advice other than the obvious, buy Bitcoin, hold it to 100K, what advice would you give yourself, and why? Maybe at the beginning of your legal career. And then number two is, if I gave you my magical pen, and with this pen you could strike a law from the books, edit a law that's on the books, or change a law that's currently on the books, what law would you strike, add, or edit, and why? While you're percolating on that, let's jump over one more time and take a look at your website. I am talking with Greg Sobo of the eponymous law firm that bears his name and his father's name. That is Sobo and Sobo. You can visit them online at SoboLaw. That's SoboLaw, SoboLaw.com. You can also give him a call. It's a pretty easy number to remember. If you know his name, that's 855 got Sobo, GOTSOBO. As always, we'll have links to those down in the description as well. So if you are injured, especially in one of the states where they practice, please feel free to reach out and get a hold of them. Before we ask those final questions, we're going to jump over and read from our final sponsor, and that is Rank with News. Is not being in the news regularly costing your law firm or your company credibility and visibility? Do you feel that getting found in Google search is more about dumb luck than science? What if there was a guaranteed way to get your firm or business featured in major national publications like Yahoo News, Bloomberg, Reuters, AP News, and others, and seeing those articles ranking nationally, even locally, sometimes in under 8 hours for major competitive keywords that people are actually searching for. What else would you need to know? Rank with News is simply the most powerful way to hit page one in under 2 weeks safely, organically, and permanently. It's like guaranteed SEO or search engine optimization on steroids, ranking quickly and sticking long term. If you're tired of poor visibility for your business or firm, visit rankwith.news to learn more and book a time to speak with a specialist about featuring your firm or your business in major national 8 and 9-figure traffic sites that can help launch you to page one in a matter of hours and help you dominate your local marketplace. Get media exposure, rank higher in Google, build credibility, and win more customers and clients with rankwith.news. And as always, we will have links to our sponsors down below as well. So we travel back in time, Greg, you and me. We get out of the flying DeLorean or whatever it happens to be. We somehow manage to not break the space-time continuum, and you're able to go over and just whisper maybe a couple of sentences, a couple of words of wisdom to yourself before we have to go back to the future. What are you going to give yourself and why?
Well, I think, my personality is one that sort of sweats the details. I'm one of those guys who worries a lot, stays up at night a lot, overthinks things. And for me, I think the advice I'd give my younger self would be to just keep working hard and not to sweat the small stuff, not to worry as much, I guess, as I do now. So much worrying is about what could happen and should happen is such wasted time. And I definitely have wasted a lot of time doing that. It's kind of the curse of a trial lawyer. A trial lawyer is always thinking 2, 3 steps ahead. That's kind of one thing skill that helps in the courtroom is anticipating what comes next. But in life, it can make it definitely a stressful ride. So I would say maybe to maybe take it easy on some of that stress about the future.
Fair enough. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's good advice in general for most people. If they could follow that advice, probably make everything better. All right, so I've got my magic pen here. Now, this pen, I'm going to give a free plug to kansasmonks.org. It's a in Atchison, Kansas. And I think one of the priests must have blessed this pen or something because I found that it has miraculous powers. It's able to from the books, edit laws that are on the books, or add a new law to the books. If I were to loan you my miraculous pen, Greg, and you could make one change, and this can be sweeping national law, this can be a stupid local law that makes you fill out forms in triplicate 8 times a week, or this could be getting rid of parking tickets. What law are you going to change if I let you borrow my magical, miraculous pen?
Oof, I hope it has a lot of ink. There's so many laws I feel could use that pen. But I will say the first one that comes to mind is New York's wrongful death law. It's the oldest unchanged law in the books in New York. It's
Huh.
in desperate need of change. It's not in lockstep with the rest of the country. It does not allow for pain and suffering of family members who lose a family member in an accident that wasn't that family member's fault. All you can get in a wrongful death case is basically damages for loss of work, really archaic things, loss of services that that person who passed away was providing. It really takes out all the emotion and sympathy that really belongs in a wrongful death case. It's the only law in the country that does that. The governor almost struck it recently, but unfortunately, it still exists over 130 years later. So that's what I would use that pen for sure.
That's I've never heard of that law, and I actually work with multiple clients in New York City who are in the PI space, which is funny.
Yeah.
So I've never heard that law. I mean, I know what wrongful death is obviously, but I didn't know that there was some sort of a weird artificial cap or legal cap on that. So
Yeah.
I'll look into that later because I'm kind of fascinated. Well, Greg, thank you very much for talking with me today, being on the podcast and letting my listeners know a little bit about who you are and what you do. I do always like to let my guest have the final word. Are there any parting words of wisdom or last thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure, God forbid, if your listeners are in an accident, they really should call an attorney right away, not try to navigate it themselves. It doesn't necessarily have to be Sobo and Sobo. Of course, I'm biased. I think we're the best there is, but I definitely would encourage them, even if it's not us, call an attorney right away. Don't try to do it yourself. You're going to start behind the 8 ball that way, and it's much better to get a head start on things, especially if you're in an accident.
I think you're allowed to be a little biased, obviously.
Thank you.
Well, Greg, thank you very much for taking time to talk with me today. This has been, as always, the Attorney Post. I have been chatting with Greg Sobo of Sobo and Sobo, the eponymous law firm that bears his name. And it's been a wonderful conversation. As always, though this podcast does talk about all sorts of legal issues, it does not constitute legal advice. Should you find yourself in need of legal advice, we always recommend that you find an attorney in the area that you need help with and get that legal advice. Obviously, if you've been injured and you're in any of the states that Sobo and Sobo work in, from was it Wisconsin all the way to New Jersey, New York, et cetera, Connecticut, I think was on there. It'd be a great reference for you having talked to Greg. He clearly has a good head on his shoulders, knows what he's doing. They've got a great win rate as well. So I think that they would be a wonderful resource for you. And as always, we will have their information down below. That's 855-GOT-SOBO or SoboLaw.com. If you're watching the podcast on any of the major podcast repositories, we always like a like, a subscribe, a rating, a share, whatever it makes sense. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, hit that thumbs up, leave us a comment down below. But the number one thing you can do with this podcast is share it with someone who could benefit from this knowledge. So if you know somebody who's been injured in a car accident, a wrongful death case, whatever it happens to be, share this podcast with them, because as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any, and this goes for everyone out there. So better knowledge, better information makes for everybody having a better life. And until next time, this is Justin West signing off. Thank you guys for listening, and have a good one.